Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, how's that? Is that all right? That's okay?
Hello and welcome to Word Up Podcast. I'm Evy.
And I'm Webster.
And today we're here with Frank Sheppard.
Good evening.
What an intro.
Yeah, you always mesmerize me with your voice.
You do have.
It gets me in trouble. Huh?
So Frank, you're a poet, you're an artist, you're a performer, you're an actor. I missed something already, I think.
No, I am what they call me at the moment. Sometimes they call me a beatnik actor, jazz actor, in that terms. But this poet thing has come up lately in the last year or so. It's because I began doing the spoken word quite regularly, thanks to you. And Enos bless over there and getting me involved in this whole circle of things. And then I've been hearing from people that I'm a poet. I write. That's true. I have been blessed with knowing poets. And that goes back some years in San Francisco, where I produce some plays of some poets. I got to meet a great poet called Emir Baraka, back in 1967, 68, when I was in high school. And because there was this racial disturbance at my high school in my last year, and I got introduced to him. And he took me under his wing, and we drove around in the dead of the night because everything was under secret. And it was like this racial trip going on. It was my first introduction to dealing with all kinds of things because I was involved in other ways in athletics and student at this school, and I had to be a part of integrating this high school. And after being there for 4 years, that spring of my graduation year, something broke out between a black student, a girl, and a white guy. And he took it upon himself to get this other person named Anthony Imperial, who was trying to make a movement towards dealing with what was happening with the Italians and the blacks in 1967, 68, when the whole black movement was going on. And so Imperial was talking about, what about white power? So when this guy went to Imperial, they began to picket the school because the white guy had gotten suspended and the girl didn't. And what had happened was one day after school, a bunch of people drove up, and the blacks had to take these buses. We were bused to school. We took the public bus almost 7 miles every day to school in this white neighborhood to integrate it. And these people showed up, and they started beating people on the heads with baseball bats and things of that nature. And I wasn't at that bus stop. I was at another bus stop, and because I didn't want to stand there with all these people at the time, I used to take the bus a stop before. And so when it went down, they said to me, "Oh, Frank, it's not you, it's them." You see, they had accepted me as being a part of them because I had gotten to that school, and within the 4 years of being there, I had became captain of the football team, and I was like this, person who stood out in that respect. So they looked at me differently because over those 4 years, they were playing sports with me and dealing with me not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom. So for them, it wasn't me they were having a problem with. It was those people, and those people were my people. And I was like, I was in a state of confusion because I wasn't into politics. I was into sports, and I didn't deal with it at all. It wasn't on my mind. I did look at this program called Soul that was a black program that was on the PBS. And I had some things going on with me. But when that went down, I was like, wow, what's going on here? So then I was chosen as a spokesperson. I mean, they brought me up to this whole auditorium of white students to me to say what was going on, what's happening. And so some people introduced me to some people from the Communist Party, and Eugene McCarthy was running for president at that time. So there was a lot of other things going on that was about to happen, and you had the thing in Chicago and all these other things. So I just got thrown into this whole box, and Baraka, somehow or another, was somebody who they told me to go see, and he had run this organization in Newark, and I drove around with him and things. But then he brought me into this whole bit, and which got the whole city involved. Because I was at the school where the burgomaster's daughter went and the fire chief's son went. And so I was in this environment that was completely elite in that way. And so when he got them into this situation, or this situation came up, it brought a whole lot of other things, because it ended up with me going on. These people from the Communist Party giving me information and showing me how to get on television. So I was on like the evening news. And then we called a citywide boycott of the high schools to come out at a certain time to go down to the Armory. My only thing was I was just looking for the students to be protected there at the school. But when I got involved and these other people got involved, and they began to ask for things that they really wanted, and they had an opportunity to change the curriculum of the school. And so you had people who said, well, we should have Black studies, and we should have Swahili, and we should have all these other languages introduced as a part of the school system. And so my whole point was like, well, I just want these, how many was us in this school? 50 out of 300 students or something like that at this school. And I just wanted to make sure that they could come, they get their safety. So that was like my eye-opener to politics and social issues. And I got to meet Baraka 30-something, almost 40 years later, because after I left him, and I got to meet him when I went back home. And he remembered me as a 17-year-old kid who was dealing with this other thing, and he had gotten involved. So the last thing he told me that I should be a writer and I should go on and this and that. But that was like my first experience with an artist and a poet at that time.
Wow. What an introduction. Most people start with, I had a pen and a paper and I wanted to get my ideas out, but that's quite a way to be thrust into that world.
Well, basically, I was always been able to be tapped on the shoulder. I mean, I got into acting because some people say you're going to act, and then I produced plays before I got into it on the stage. There was a price to pay before becoming a performer, and that was producing and doing other things in San Francisco, and eventually finding my way into the business or the craft. I was fortunate to be in a community center in San Francisco, and people used to come through and do volunteer work, give workshops and things like that. So I never had to pay for a workshop. I always got it for like, hey, come on, we're going to give you this. And to my good fortune, I got to work with some of the artists from the another generation. Artists from the 50s, Bea Richards, who performed many years in movies and got nominated for Academy Awards. She was my teacher in San Francisco. Then the woman who directed Your Arms Too Short to Box with God, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. She was my director at San Francisco Opera in San Francisco. And I got an opportunity to meet people who were from that other generation, who took it upon themselves just to give it to me. I was fortunate.
And for our audience who don't know you, how did you get to Amsterdam? How's your life in the US taken you here?
My journey.
Yes, your journey.
I started off in Newark, New Jersey. And then when I finished school, I went to work on Madison Avenue for capitalists and white capitalists. Then I went to work for Johnson Products, a black capitalist. And that was after my hippie days in college. So I went through that and made my way to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, things changed. I got involved with different kinds of people, and they brought me into the art scene. And I just not fell into it, I wanted it after a while. And I got to get to Los Angeles and work in Hollywood, the Hill Street Blues, Alfred Hitchcock Present, theater, film. Then one day in San Francisco, this guy showed up and said, he had auditioned for a play, and they were coming to Europe. And he told me about this thing, and so I went and got myself a saxophone, or I had a saxophone or something. So I went on the audition, and they were coming to perform in Edinburgh, and then come for a few days in San Francisco. They had booked the Beauvais and the South Scarborough. So they took me. I spent a month in Scotland, the Edinburgh Festival. Then we came over to do those 5 performances or something. And somebody had given me a name of somebody at the Milk Vac. So I went by to see him when I got here. And he said, Idris and Rodessa, you can play here. And I said, you got to wait until, this is September, so you got to wait until like November or January, something like that. And so I said, okay. So I thought I was going to hang out in Holland for a few months. In the meantime, I got a job with a group from Chile who had got deported from Chile. They had went back over to Chile, and they put them on a ship, and they docked in Rotterdam. So they happened to be in Rotterdam, and these people got in contact with them for this festival, Showcase Something Festival. And so they needed an actor, and I answered an ad in the newspaper. So I went and performed with the people from Chile until I was able to get my thing going at the Milk Vac, and that was it. So I worked with that group, and then I did something at the Milk Vac, and then this guy asked me to do a student production he was doing called The Meeting. It was about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And he asked me to do Malcolm X. And luckily for me, I had connections at the Milk Vac, and I had an open date. So when we finished it at the school, the theater school, I was able to say, well, let's take it over to the Milk Vac, because he gave me another date because it was no business in February or whatever. So he said, when you have something, you can bring it. So we brought it back, and it was a hit. Econ Television did it as a teleplay. This producer from Econ walked up to me at the school, gave me her card because she thought her father would want to direct this. He was a freedom fighter. He was a filmmaker. So he made a teleplay out of the piece called The Meeting. And that was it in that terms. And we toured the country. And
how many years now have you been here?
Oh, come on. That's many years ago. That's many years ago. That's when I came here in the 80s. I got here in 86. So when I arrived in 86, everybody was looking at what was coming from America, political or social, and it hit a nerve. So much of a nerve that I got to go and be a guest and speak at these high schools and things like that, where they would have an American Day. Somebody saw me do the performance at the Milk Vac and invite me to have a whole meeting with like 3 classrooms of students, high school students, talking about freedom in America and all these other things. So it just clicked on that nature. And that was at the time when people were up on the whole thing that was going on in South Africa. So if you look at the whole thing that was going on here in the late 80s and the political and social things that were going out, it was all about South Africa. It was all about the other things. And then you had this whole issue. If you're doing something about Malcolm X, it was like, wow, Malcolm X. So that was like people wanted to know and people wanted to deal with it on that time. That was it. Right time, right place. Again, this guy saw me walking out of a place, and before I got home, he got my number and called me to ask me to do this student thing for him. And I said, well, yeah, I'll do it. In which I got to meet one of the people from the Black Poets. The Last Poets. Yeah. And he did Martin Luther King, and I did Malcolm X. And I was a real follower of the Last Poets. I listened to them when I was at university, and then I got the opportunity to work with the original.
Wow, that must be impressive experience.
Mr. Kane, Guyland Kane, and that was a great experience. And he and I to do it for television. It played on the Econ for 3 years. They kept bringing the piece back, and we toured the country with it.
And how would you say that Amsterdam changed throughout all these years? Or the scene, not just Amsterdam, the scene and the people?
Well, the people I know have all gone. And I got real fortunate to work with people where it would be like if I had an idea, and if I got up in the morning with an idea, I can walk into some place unannounced and say, hey, Frank, I got this. And then it's like they would make sure that it was done. I mean, the money was here, everything was there. So that in itself has changed a lot, but things do change.
Of course.
And so that's the difference. But it's cool because I'm meeting a whole new other generation of people. And I'm working with people now who I'm working with, and I work with their parents. So that's been happening a lot lately. You know, I'm working with somebody. Oh, you work with my father. Oh, you work with my mother. That sort of thing. So there it is.
What are you working on nowadays?
On Valentine's Day, I'm doing this piece called Two Tales in One Song, based on a piece of product I made called it's a CD. And it was where we're doing tales and songs, and I wrote all the tales, and Flores does the music, and we do a live performance. So that's what we're doing now as far as something to say solid that I'm continually doing. Then there's things that are always happening at the Labyrinth. I find myself at the Labyrinth a lot in that respect. It's a good place to be, and it's smooth and everything. And I work with these guys there at the Labyrinth. And other than that, I just did a movie. It was on last week on it was a documentary on Donny Hathaway, and it was called Mr. Soul. So it was aired just last Sunday. Saturday on the VPRO. So you can still catch it on Vermis. And that was interesting because it was from a phone call via. Somebody told this guy, you want to do this, you want to change, get this guy Frank Sheppard. So he called me, and I went to the studio, and I did some lines for him that he had written for a certain part that he wanted to change in the movie. He wanted this character who was in Donny Hathaway's head to have a voice. Because Donny always talked about this character who followed him all his life called Mr. Soul. So he had a little part written for Mr. Soul based on interviews and everything. And then he decided, I think I want to change some things in the movie. I want to have your voice more. So he put my voice on many different things in the movie, which then made me larger in the film. And I became Mr. Soul. And it worked out really well. I didn't know what I was doing because it's out of context, because you just have text and you read it and you deal it in the moment, and you don't know how it's going to fit in this whole scheme of things. So how he edited into the whole thing, I became the voice of the movie, so much so that these people in Rotterdam invited me to be there at the premiere of the film and do 3 songs or 2 songs for an audience there. That was nice. It was in a club situation. And I got a chance to do a couple of songs. I'm not Donny Hathaway, but I do like to interpret things like he used to interpret things. If he did a song that somebody else did, he definitely did it his way, and whatever hit he wanted to put on it. So I work like that anyway. If I take a song, somebody go, I thought I heard that song before, and now, but it's an interpretation, and I don't like to do covers. If I'm going to do something somebody else did, I'm going to bring something else different. I'm not going to copy that artist.
Right. And I'm also wondering, do you have preference for the performing to live audience or acting? Or it's both equally close to you?
I would imagine that what comes. It's the moment, because when you sing acting and live and this, there's so many different aspects to this thing that we do as far as creating something for someone else. If I'm doing an animation for a taken film, or if I'm doing an animation or doing something for corporate, if I'm working for Philips or this or that, it all involves being able to make something believable and true. And with that, I enjoy doing that, rather if it's on stage or if it's a voice or if it's in film or whatever, that is a part of me that I enjoy. So there's no real preference over this or that. I believe sometimes I miss something if I do something so much on this side. I say, I haven't done something in the studio in a long time, or I haven't done something, or stage or something. But other than that, it's just like if it comes, it's the moment, and you make the most out of what you have to do at that given time, that opportunity.
It sounds like you've done a lot so far in your career, and it's great hearing about all the projects that you've done and the projects that you're doing. And I'm just wondering, how do you stay inspired, and how do you keep the energy to be able to keep coming up with new ideas?
Well, when you say that, my career, I have a thing called from film to live. I experienced that from film to live. There been a few times there's something I've done in film or on stage has become live. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had a casting director manager who always believed in me. And he believed that I cross the color line. So if you send something out to say, we want some actors and da-da-da, and if you don't put, we want black actors, it's assumed that you want white actors. Yeah. And when they send out the daily, they say, we want a black actor, we want a this, and you see it when you're going. So you say, no, Frank, go over there. Go over there anyway. So I go in, and it changed the whole concept of what they want. So I had a film called Condom Sense.
Great title.
Okay, now it was a film that was made for health services and things to get people to use condoms. So the premise was, this guy was a counselor, or he was talking to a guy about using condoms, and he didn't want to use them, and the guy had to convince him why he should use a condom because his woman wanted him to use a condom. Now, I did that film. So I'm walking through the neighborhood with my son, and I see all these teenage women out there pushing baby carriages. So I say to the guy who's running the center there, I say, hey, I got this film, maybe I can show it to these guys. And he said, the hell, people are going to be back here next week. You should come by and meet these people. So I go there, and this guy is there, and he says, hey, I got that film, Condom Sense, and you in it, and we got a project from Ford Foundation about teen fathers, and we need a community outreach worker to be a part of this program, to bring these boys into this program, to be teen fathers. It's teen pregnancy. So Ford is doing the thing, yeah? So my mentor said, Frank, you should do something for the neighborhood. Okay, so I take the job. And the next thing I know, I'm on Good Morning America. I'm booked in something else. And this project is become so big that it's on Donahue, is all over the whole bit. So because I did the character as a counselor, I get asked to be a real counselor Then I get invited to Rotterdam to some the Kodak theater or something where they were to be a keynote speaker and show the film in Rochester, New York. They fly me cross country and I had only been at the job for 3 days.
That's so brilliant.
That is how it works. A lot of times if you do something and people see you do something, then they bring you into something else, which then is all about changing the thing. My out is one thing, but for me, I've been blessed and able to get involved with making about a change in many other aspects, and for fair housing, for human rights as an investigator. I then segued into being an investigator for the working on private investigator for the Black Liberation Army and other things, and involved in this whole different aspect of things simply because I was asked to get involved. And then it turns out like that.
Do you not ever feel like an imposter when that happens?
No, I mean, no. If you're going to deal with people who discriminate in housing, who discriminate in other things, they have to be brought to account for that. And if it's a way of getting them to make something right and do righteous by others, because it's so horrible to discriminate against somebody because of the color of their skin or their race or whatever. And if a person feels that they want something and they go there to get it, and then they feel they don't get it simply because of who they are, it's wrong. And the people want to get away with it. If they get away with it, there's a price to pay. And that's one of the whole things that the United States had in many respects, where they got involved in that respect to say, okay, if they're going to be discriminating, then we're going to have people go in and try to catch them in that lie, catch them in that point. And we have a service where people can call and say, I feel I've been discriminated. And it happened to me personally. I knew this place. I wanted the apartment. And when I went there, the guy said, oh, no, it's not available. But I had a sense this thing was placed. So I sent my girlfriend, who was Japanese, to this Korean store that was in our neighborhood. And they told her, oh, yeah, it's an apartment there. So I left America after that situation. But a couple of years later, I got this thing from my manager that they gave me $15,000 because I had applied that I felt that I was discriminated against, and they caught them in this discrimination. And 2 years later, I got $15,000 for their
wow
thing.
Sounds like it's worth it.
No, it is worth it. I mean, no, it's like discrimination is horrible. I mean, they used to discriminate against black men in San Francisco, and I was asked to do this undercover thing for the Human Rights Commission to see what hotels were discriminating against black men who wanted to get a hotel room in the worst part of San Francisco in the Tenderloin. And these things happen. And they have to be taken care of. And if you get involved, you find many ways of making a change for people voting, making it. And so those are the things that I'm most proud of in those situations where you really change something as an individual.
Yeah, of course. And it seems like you say yes to a lot of projects. Have you ever said no?
No. I said yes. I say yes, but it's how you get into something. I became a private investigator working on murder cases simply because I was looking for some money to supplement my acting. And this guy who was there at my mentor's place, he said, hey, why don't you work with me on this case that I'm working on? And he happened to be a real famous lawyer who won the case for Attica. He won the case against, he was Fred Hampton's lawyer. So when you put in these situations, there's no way you're going to say no. You're going to get involved, and if you're lucky to be in the right place at the right time, then this is what's happening. It's like it's there to be. You're supposed to be there, and this is supposed to happen, and that's just the way it is.
So since you say yes a lot, would you perform for us now?
Good segue.
You have to place the tail in the place where it fits, be it mind or heart. And this is something that's been with me for a long time, many years. I could say that it was the thing that got me on my way. Written by somebody named Holly Kern. I don't know where she is right now, but she had wrote this, and she was a member of the theater company I was in, and I was amazed by it, and it took me around the world. Andy was new. White kid from New York. Well, he had never been south before. Well, me and Mickey, we kept teasing Andy about the training, you see. We was up at this school in Ohio, and part of the training was learning how to protect yourself. Now, when I say protect yourself, I don't mean hitting anybody back. You're supposed to love the person who's beating you on your head and burning down your house. That's what Old Man Bear be saying. Old Man Bear be up there writing on the blackboard, the non-violent activists must refuse to hate. Well, we were up at that school when we got the word about the church burning down, the church where we were going to hold Freedom School. Well, me and Mickey decided we had best head back down there right away. And Andy, he wanted to come along with us, but we thought that Andy should stay back up there and get a bit more practice. But Andy, he couldn't wait to get down there. He couldn't wait to help register these people to vote. So we started on down there driving. And then we were driving in the car, and the car radio was on. And that's where we had gotten the word that the United States Senate had passed the Civil Rights Bill 72-27. Mickey said that proved you were right. Well, I hope he is. We got on down to Longdale, and we went over there to the church where we were going to hold the Freedom School. So when we got down there was nothing but broken up glass and brick and they said, don't matter, no, we're going to teach these people to register to vote. So we went over there to the other church where the people were that Sunday, and when we got there, they told us where that happened. It seemed that last week a bunch of white men had drove up and just started beating on everybody, and they just burned down that church. And they wanted to talk with us, but they were like a little put off, they were like a little scared, and they wouldn't talk to us for too long. So we thought that we had best head back on over to Meridian till things cooled down a bit. And we decided to take the long road back, and because everybody be out there Sunday driving and things and so on. I was doing the driving. I was doing about 35 miles an hour. We were just laughing. And around all the time we got out distance from that church, we saw a patrol car following us. And he was following us for a couple of miles, and then he pulled us off to the side of the road. None other than Deputy Sheriff Price himself. Said he was stopping us because one of our rear tires had gone flat. And we don't see how, because we never left Meridian unless everything on that car was working perfect. Well, he sat there on his big eyes, and he watched us change that tire. And then after we changed the tire, he said, we're all under arrest. I said, for what? Changing the tire? He said, no. He said, I was arrested for speeding. I was only doing 35 miles an hour. Didn't make no difference, though. And said, Andy, Mickey was under arrest for resisting arrest. Well, he took us back to the county jail and booked us all as Negroes, which was a surprise to me because I ain't never known Neshoba cops to be colorblind. Didn't make no difference, though. And as they were marching us off to the cell, Mickey said, how about our phone call? The deputy said, later. And Neshoba probably meant never. Well, he took us back and put us all in a in the cell. It was hot. Hottest day of the year. Longest day, and I just kept thinking and hoping that somebody come down here and get us out of this mess. Thinking about those other kids coming out to register the people to vote. I wonder if they find some love in their heart for Deputy Sheriff Price. Around about the time it got dark, the deputy walked in, escorted us all out the cells to a station wagon. Well, I had this bad feeling. We probably gonna end up visiting some of the deputy friends, probably end up tarred or feathered or worse. He drove us out from the county jail down the Rock Cut Road. A few miles, then he pulled off to the side of the road. Moon was high. There it was. Bunch of the deputy friends looking like a lynch mob. Recognized one of them, knew Harley, knew him from Meridian, but he wouldn't look at me. And they start circling the car, shouting things. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you stayed where you belong, you wouldn't be here with us. They pulled it out the car. And one of them said to Mickey, "Hey, Jew-boy, you still think some nigger as good as I am?" One of them took out a shotgun, shot Andy straight through the heart. Harley was over in the ditch throwing up, and they shot Andy. Andy had only been in Mississippi 24 hours, and they shot him without a word, and they just laughing. One said, "See what happened to your nigger-loving friends, Coon? I was gonna die. I couldn't let them do to me what they had did to Mickey and Andy. I'm sorry, Andy, but I couldn't do that." And I just started swinging my hands, which all kinds of ways, and shaking it. And I said, "Hey, that nigga want to put up a fight." And he took out an iron rod and he started beat me on my back till I just couldn't feel anymore. And then one of them said, "Let's finish the nigga off." And they had not ought to done that. And they shot me 3 times. Twice in the heart and once in the head. And then buried our bodies so deep down in that dam that no one was going to find us for a long, long time. And I just been thinking lately about Mickey and Andy laying there in that dirt, and old man Baird writing on the blackboard, "The non-violent activists must refuse to hate."
That was a journey, man.
Well, she wrote that before the movie Mississippi Burning came out. And she did the investigation of how these 3 young men were killed. And then she wrote that monologue. And she wrote another monologue that won me an acting award in Los Angeles, based on somebody going to register to vote. And she was a special person, white girl, sort of hippie-like. And she was a writer with the theater company I was involved with in San Francisco, the One Act Theater Company, a Jewish theater company, brought me into their thing. And I seen some of her work. And when they wanted to do a monologue festival, I saw a monologue that she had written. I was 30 at the time or something. And the character was 64 years old. So in the audition, I dressed up what I thought the character would look like and went on the audition. And the person who was going to direct this monologue, she thought that I was so old that I would not remember the lines. And then someone from the theater, because, no, Frank is only 30, because I had gotten to this costume, and what my head was like, this is what this character would look like. And so I got the part, and then I got invited to Los Angeles to be in an acting competition, win some money and get an agent in Los Angeles. And I went down and won the competition doing this part. And then I used that monologue for voting registration, campaign for the NAACP. And I rented them the video that I had made of this character, and they used it for their voting drive. And it was like that. It was Willis James Washington was the character's name.
Look what you did to the room.
No, when you said do something, I could not. Yeah, what can I? I can only attribute that beautiful piece, one of the pieces that Holly Kern wrote, and that piece and another piece became a part of my one-man show that got me when I did it in Los Angeles, and I did it here when I came in. It was called Living on This Planet. So from those pieces, I then put together the basis of a one-person show, adding other stuff, and it was a part, and it's something that I could never forget. Even though I did it those many years later, it still can come back to me in my head or whatever.
It kind of left me a little bit shaken, actually.
Definitely.
I didn't know you were going there with it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Stories and boys. Yeah, nice.
No, you realize, it has that slick when you're you're listening to a dead man.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's the he died. James did die, And when she wrote it from that, you can imagine she wrote it from that perspective. And she just said, you can do this anytime you want, anywhere you want. And this is like, so it stays with me 40 years later or whatever. It can come to me and use it to whatever thing. Yeah.
What's your process like getting into the character of a dead man?
Well, the whole thing is within me. Yeah. You really have to know the situations of people on this planet who's gone through that, who deal with that. If you deal in that way, or if you feel that way, if that's your thing, it's just there in the fact that they just come up. And I don't have to think about that. Maybe I might miss a line, and then while I'm doing it, well, I didn't go, oh, I'm sorry, Mickey, I didn't want to give in to that. But that's something in me. But that doesn't have to be, because I can play around with it, because it's mine now, that I can say, oh, I missed that line. And as I'm saying something, I say, I missed that line. Then, 45 years ago, how could you remember that line? But you've missed it after you go past, and you go, oh, I didn't do that. Well, I came here. And then I'm trying to think of the time, too, how much time we have in this. Yeah.
9 minutes and 25 seconds.
That's how long it is?
Yeah. It's a perfect length, because I was running out of data.
And I'm wondering also, since we already talked about how much yes you say, and how your process works, what would be your advice to people who are starting or who are just thinking of starting and exploring the scene or the art scene?
Yeah, that's difficult. Because before I became an actor and I was working in New York City, I got as far as the actor's studio door, and I didn't go through. I didn't go through because I felt like I'm a businessman and I'm this and this is expected of me and and what am I going to go into this art thing? So it's a matter of if you feel it, you just have to take that step and do it. There is, again, I was fortunate to meet people who are in the business who decided that they were going to bring me in to it, to use it to their advantage. And the advantage for me getting into it is because I used to be in sales and everything. They brought me in to be their producer. So I had to produce a couple of things for them and then find my way eventually to get to performer.
Yeah.
So you must be aware that there's always opportunities and you got to be willing to take the chance when something is knocking or something is near. And I met somebody last night who was saying, I write, but I haven't performed yet. And I said, well, look, you got to make that step if you're going to do that. If you want to do that, you have to. That's the only way that it can happen.
So against all odds, just try.
Yeah, there's no harm in trying. That's what it's all about. You don't get anything unless you take a chance at doing it. I mean, every day, every time I go out for an audition or something, if I'm not prepared or if I'm not ever, but if you're going to get the opportunity, you have to make the most out of it. And whatever you in the business when you auditioning constantly, you have to be really able to deal with rejection.
As the saying goes, you win or you learn, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's so many variables that it's just not your work that it's like what they want and what is perfect for them that they think they're going to be able to work with. And that's the whole key. It's not just up to you. I mean, you can be terrible, or you can be good, and still don't get the part because you're not right in their eyes for the part.
Right.
And you never know what is right for the part. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then what would you advise not to do?
Well, I never know that because people never tell me that that's not right to do. You know, it's like I had an opportunity to do a TV program and they had given me this script and for me to learn the lines. And I took the script home, and on my way to the home, I stopped at a restaurant that I go to, a cafe and restaurant, and to get a burrito. And I went to the bathroom, the WC. So I put the script on the wall, and it went down behind this thing. And so I couldn't have the script, so I couldn't learn the lines.
Oh, no.
So when I came in the next day for my callback, I said, look, you won't believe what just happened yesterday when I was going home. You wouldn't believe that. I put that script on and it's, hey, that's Walter. That's the character. So you have it on there. And so that's the business. That is, it's crazy. Whatever you do or whatever you don't do, you don't know until in the spot. And if you're fortunate enough, you get it. Yeah.
So also I feel like you would consider yourself as a very lucky man.
Yeah, it's definitely an element of serendipity across your life. So.
Sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes you can, for me, if I saw something on television and I said, wow, I would like to be in a story like that. And you see an old movie and you say, I'd like to be play that character. And it was a movie I saw was about South Africa. And it was made in the 50s. Sidney Poitier was young, he was in it. And I thought the characters were like, oh. And Lord and behold, within a couple of weeks, they're doing a stage production for the San Francisco Spring Opera called Lost in Stars. It was a Broadway show. And they brought up this director from New York. And I went, this friend said, hey, they're doing it. And I went down there and I got the part of one of like the character that I thought in the movie. because I dressed in khaki pants. I went there, but it just happened. And sometimes things happen like that, and you don't have any. It's in the universe. There's nothing to do with you. It's just completely, totally in the universe. And there, if you call it luck or you call it whatever it is, but that's the way of the world. That's the way it turns.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you for sharing your stories. And where our listeners could find more information about you,
Last night I was thinking about something. And you know what they call subscribers. But I have a different idea. I want to become something that people can subscribe to. And we're going to take subscriber to another level. It's not donation. It's like you can subscribe to Frank Sheppard live. And so not give me money live in my pocket, but go see things as like, you know, I'm a subscriber to that guy. And that means that I go see him, because subscribing is different from donation. And when you give donations, it's more like we're poor, we're that. But if you say, I'm a subscriber, where is he playing and what is he doing? So just look out for Frank Sheppard and consider yourself subscribing, and there might be a chance that I do stories that you want to hear, and you can depend upon that. So there it is. Other than that, just check out Frank Sheppard on Google or Frank Sheppard on Facebook or whatever, and just become involved and just connect. And I'm open for connection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for our audience listening, you know where to find us on www.wordupodcast.com, where you'll find past episodes as well as information about our special guests. Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye. Doei!
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys. No, it was a beautiful experience, because this is much, much different than anything else in terms of, I've never worked on a podcast, but I just did see Angelica Houston
right.
on a podcast a few weeks ago, and I liked the format of this guy.